It's 1808, and Napoleon has just waltzed down into Spain, ousted the King of Spain, and installed his brother as the King of Spain, to the delight of basically no one, especially not a particular priest over in the Spanish colony of New Spain, who one day called his followers together and gave a speech demanding the end of Spanish rule over Mexico. He then assembled a violent mob behind him, which he used to march in various towns west of Mexico City, capture them, and pillage them. However, the army of New Spain eventually caught up with him and defeated him in the Battle of Calderon Bridge, after which he was executed for treason. So, revolution's over? No. Hidalgo had just knocked over the first domino, and even while he was still alive, rebellions had begun to spring up all over New Spain. And this is where our story begins. I'm Redcoat Histories, and this is Santa Anna. He was born at a young age in Veracruz, and became a cadet at the age of 16, who was then deployed in Texas in order to defeat an American filibustering expedition there. And it was after the climax of this campaign, the Battle of Medina, he witnessed his commander's brutal counterinsurgency tactics, declaring martial law over entire towns, mass executing prisoners, and also abusing their families. It is commonly thought that this had a profound impact on the young Santa Anna, who would later reuse these exact same tactics when he was back in Texas only a few decades later. Keep watching to find out how and why. He continued fighting for New Spain for years after that, but things all seemed to be slowly calming down. The Napoleonic Wars were over, and Spain was able to begin shipping troops off to Mexico to crush the rebellions once and for all. Everything should start going swimmingly so long as none of those soldiers get any bright ideas. Oh, I'm bored. Let's think of something to do, shall we? Oh, I know! Violent military insurrection! Due to disputes over pay and working conditions, in 1820 troops in Cadiz waiting to be shipped off to New Spain revolted, forcing the Spanish monarchy to re-adopt the liberal 1812 Constitution of Spain, something which the conservative establishment of New Spain really did not like. And suddenly for them, unity with Spain went from being of paramount importance to being less desirable than a roadkill sandwich. Soon, one of the new Spanish commanders, General Augustine, jumped ship and joined the rebels. And seeing the writing on the wall, Santa Anna followed suit, and also jumped ship, soon to be followed by many other new Spanish generals. For this, he was rewarded with the rank of general, and joined in as the rebels swept control over all of New Spain. And by the time the new viceroy showed up to take charge of New Spain, he found that by this point consisted of almost nothing. To which he responded, nope, nope, not today, nope, not happening, and quickly signed the Treaty of Cordoba with the rebels, giving New Spain full independence under the new name, the Mexican Empire. In the aftermath of the War of Independence, Santa Anna became governor of Veracruz, and began to settle down. But Mexico did not. For one, it lost this. Second of all, Mexico's economy for centuries had been based around exporting raw resources to Spain. But now that they were independent, they no longer had anyone to sell their shiny rocks to, meaning that Mexico's economy did something like this. Mexican society, as a result of this instability, began to split into two camps, the conservative centralists and the liberal federalists. But I'm sure that newly appointed Emperor Augustine will have an excellent solution to this. You know what this country really needs? A new economic model? A dissolved Congress. Seemingly out of the blue, Augustine decided to dissolve Congress, a move which pleased literally no one. He then attempted to strip Santa Anna of his governorship over Veracruz, only to realize all too late that he no longer had any friends. Santa Anna retaliated and began a violent military insurrection against him, and he was soon joined by everyone else that didn't like Augustine. And after capturing a few cities in Mexico, Augustine got the message, reconvened Congress, abdicated, and ran away to another country, ending the Mexican Empire and beginning the First Republic. So, after overthrowing yet another unpopular government, Santa Anna then went home and relaxed, but not for long. In 1828, Mexico had an election, which was quite heavily contested between the conservative candidate, Manuel Gomez Pedraza, and the liberal candidate Vincent Guerrero, who Santa Anna supported. But his guy lost the election, which made him rather angry. So when you're a general in a new, unstable, and highly corrupt republic, what do you do when the guy you want to be in charge doesn't get put in charge? Well, naturally, you stage a violent military insurrection, which is exactly what Santa Anna did. And soon, Mexican troops were marching into Mexico City, forcing Pedraza to resign and allowing Guerrero to take his place. And in the aftermath, Santa Anna was hailed as the defender of democracy, or violently overthrowing it democratically. Like, don't think about it too much. But this didn't fix any of Mexico's problems, and the country continued to just get poorer and more unstable, which got the attention of their former overlord, Spain. You see, while their viceroy had given them independence, this was not recognized by the Spanish monarchy, who still only viewed Mexico as a rebellious subject, and they were fully intent on carrying out some good old reconquista. And so, on the 26th of July, 1829, 3,600 soldiers left from Cuba and made a landing at Cabo Rojo. Santa Anna, once he caught wind of this, loaded his boys onto ships and sailed north to meet the Spaniards. In the meantime, Mexican militias had gone about harassing the Spanish and committing scorched earth tactics in order to drain the Spanish of supplies. When Santa Anna arrived on the scene on August the 11th, he found an undersupplied and demoralized Spanish force, which he promptly ordered an assault on. Oh, you're back! Did we win? Well, considering I'm missing my arm, he's missing his leg, and he's missing just about everything, what do you think happened? So we won? The first assault on the Spanish failed, but once some more reinforcements arrived on the scene, Santa Anna tried again. Oh, you're back again. Did we win this time? Well, considering there's a smug Spaniard standing right there obnoxiously waving his flag at us, what do you think happened? So we won? The second assault on the Spanish failed. After this, a storm came in, and while it demoralized the Mexicans, it absolutely ruined the Spanish fortification. And so, a demand of unconditional surrender was sent to the Spanish, which they rejected. So, Santa Anna thought to himself, well, you know what, maybe third time is the charm. Attack! However, third time was not the charm, and Santa Anna was once again defeated. The Spanish then tried to follow this up with an attack of their own on Santa Anna's position, but this also failed. And in the aftermath of this attack, it became clear to the Spanish that they couldn't just overlook their supply problem forever, and thus negotiated a surrender to Santa Anna in exchange for safe passage back to Cuba, to which he accepted. Despite losing almost every single battle he fought in that campaign, for being the general who kicked the Spanish out of Mexico, Santa Anna in the aftermath was hailed as the hero of Tampico and the Napoleon of the West, titles which would quickly go to his head. After the Battle of Tampico, he marched back up to Mexico City in order to enjoy his newfound prestige and meet up with the president. Ah, it's good to meet you again. Wait a minute, you're not the guy installed in a coup last year. While Santa Anna was away fighting the Spanish, Mexican politicians were busy fighting each other. In a coup organized by his vice president, Guerrero had been ousted and replaced by the conservative Anastasio Bustamante. Because this is Mexican politics, secret societies quickly organized in order to oppose his tyrannical rule, which then got in contact with Santa Anna and said something like this to him.
Want some violent military insurrection, boy?
Oh boy, violent military insurrection, I'm in! Santa Anna was soon recruited to the cause of overthrowing Bustamante, and in January of 1832, another rebellion was launched, with Santa Anna leading the rebel forces from Veracruz. And while initially facing difficulties, revolt soon broke out from Guerrero to Texas, and after Bustamante was defeated in Puebla, he signed a treaty with the rebels, resigned, and left Mexico. In the aftermath of the rebellion, the president that was president 2 presidencies ago was supposed to be made president, but Santa Anna was done with just opposing corrupt leaders. He wanted to become one himself, and due to all of his prestige that he had accumulated from leading one coup, defeating the Spanish, and now leading a second coup, he was made into the president of Mexico. And while he enjoyed the flashy title, he didn't seem to really care much for actually running his country. Boring! I'm going back to Veracruz. So he instead let his vice president run the joint, while he cleared off to Veracruz to simply enjoy himself on his sweet new title. He would occasionally pop back to Mexico City, change a few things up, and then run away back to Veracruz, but overall things remained relatively stable. For about a year. You see, his vice president was a staunch liberal who'd gone about implementing all sorts of liberal things into Mexico's government structure, something which the conservatives did not like, who promptly went to Santa Anna and begged him to retake the presidency in order to stop him. And Santa Anna, who if you couldn't tell by this point had no real political backbone and would just side with whoever it was most convenient to side with at the time, marched back over to Mexico City, retook the presidency, and declared that Mexico is not yet ready for democracy. He dissolved Congress. He sent his vice president into exile. He replaced the state system. He altered so much for Mexico that in Mexican historiography, this is generally considered the end of the Mexican Federal Republic, the beginning of the Centralist Republic. Conservatives were naturally over the moon about all of this, but you know who wasn't? Everyone else. And can you guess what followed? Yep, that's right. Violent military insurrection. Zacatecas was the first to rise up, soon to be followed by everyone's favorite cowboy country, Texas. However, Texas had a lot more reason to rise up than simply we don't like Santa Anna. Let me explain. Because of Texas's rather low population at the time, shortly before he left office, Emperor Augustine, remember him, signed a bill that permitted Americans to settle in the region. And soon, Texas stopped looking like this and a bit more like this. By 1830, the Mexicans started to realize that this was becoming a bit of a problem, and thus banned any further immigration from the USA, which naturally annoyed the Americans already living in Texas. Tensions between the Mexican authorities and the Anglos living in Texas would only continue to grow, with the Anahuac disturbances breaking out in 1832. Which, I must say, go Google that stuff. It's actually hilarious. It sounds like something out of a Western movie, but it's not. It's reality. Go Google that stuff. Anyways, tangent over. And when Santa Anna came back to power as a centralist, things completely boiled over. He wanted to massively increase the power of the Mexican central government at the expense of all the states. And in the name of this, he began decreasing the size of their militias. The militia in Zacatecas did not approve of this, rebelled, and got crushed. Santa Anna sent a general north with 300 to 500 troops to disarm the Texas militia off their cannon. However, if you know anything about Texans, you should know that the last thing you should try to do to them is touch their gun collection. And this attempt by the Mexicans to do exactly that went exactly as you would expect. The Texans, seeing the Mexicans coming, mobilized their militia along with the cannon, and also stitched together a flag which looked something like this. Then, on October the 2nd, they faced a small unit of Mexican cavalry in the Battle of Gonzales. And won, forcing the Mexicans to fall back to San Antonio. And after a few more battles and skirmishes in and around the city, they were completely kicked out of Texas. I wonder how my boys up in Texas are doing. Ow. Needless to say, Santa Anna was not too pleased with this violent military insurrection. So after he was through with Zacatecas, he marched north with 7,000 troops to deal with Texas. As he marched on San Antonio, Texans were busy fortifying a small mission house, known as the Alamo. Once Santa Anna arrived on the scene, he promptly occupied San Antonio and besieged the Alamo. And while its defenses were able to hold out for a good while, there were a number of issues. Number one, after the first wave of Mexican troops had been defeated, a lot of the Texan troops got the impression that the war was over, and thus went home, meaning that they were now rather short on manpower. On top of that, the few reinforcements they were meant to receive just never arrived. And while the Texans were able to repel 2 separate assaults from the Mexicans, by the third it was just too much, resulting in the Alamo's fall on the 6th of March, after which all the remaining troops inside were executed. Santa Anna's brutality in the aftermath of the battle caused outrage among the Texans, fueling the motivation to resist, as shown by the fact that shortly after this event, the provisional Texan government decided to upgrade the war from being a mere rebellion to a war of independence. And on March the 2nd, the Republic of Texas was officially declared as an independent state. However, this did not stop Santa Anna's advance. He continued pushing and winning battles in the north, while in the south a new challenger approached, General Urrea, who went about encircling and destroying the Texan force stationed in the town of Goliad, and under orders from Santa Anna, he had all the POWs executed. This became known to the Texans as the Goliad Massacre, and would soon become another rallying cry for the Texan troops. And both it and the prior Alamo Massacre ticked off the Texans enough to encourage hundreds of new volunteers to sign up to the Texan army. But for the meantime, the Mexicans only continued to advance, and things were not looking good for Texas. But fortunately for them, Santa Anna was about to make some serious strategic blunders. For one, he split his army into 3 groups, in order to both secure supplies while still being able to advance on the Texan capital, meaning that the group of around 600 men he personally led no longer had nearly the same numbers advantage on the Texans. And second of all, he decided to camp his army next to the San Jacinto River. without any guards. Is this guy stupid or something? Seeing an absolutely golden opportunity, the Texan Council of War voted to attack. And thus, on April the 21st, 1836, the Texans assaulted the camp. The men slowly made their advance across the prairie, but were only spotted when around 200 meters from the camp. And at that moment, the Texan cannons began to roar, as did the men as they charged across the battlefield, with cries of "Remember the Alamo! Remember Goliad!" This all happened right in the middle of the Mexican siesta, meaning that they were caught completely off guard. The Texans swept through the Mexican camp, and within only 18 minutes of the fight starting, the entire Mexican force had been routed, and the big man himself, Santa Anna, had been captured. He had just gone from being on the verge of winning the war to now being completely at the mercy of some very angry Texans. In the aftermath of the battle, the treaties of Velasco were signed, in which Santa Anna officially recognized Texas's independence in exchange for his life and safe passage back to Mexico. Meanwhile, the news had reached Mexico City that Santa Anna had just lost a war, which is something you really don't want to do if you run any country, especially not Mexico, because shortly after this news spread, Santa Anna was deposed, and in humiliation he retired back to his home in Veracruz. Now, one way he could have won against the Texans would be if he had made the simple decision to subscribe to Redcoat histories, as doing this would have made him 1,000% more intelligent, and he would not have made such a silly mistake as to leave his camp unguarded. So, if you don't want to end up as a disgraced military dictator, subscribe. Anyways, sellout time's over. You would think that after losing like that, his political career would have been well and truly over. But you see, if a boomerang became a human, it would be Santa Anna, because this man just keeps coming back. And this time, it would be to fight the French. You see, during one of Mexico City's regular spouts of violent military insurrection, a French pastry shop had been damaged. Naturally, the owner of this pastry shop was a bit annoyed, so he wrote a letter to his government to complain about it, to which the French government responded by demanding that the Mexican government hand over compensation money for all of the French businesses damaged in Mexico. So are you gonna give us compensation or something? Don't be ridiculous. I'm not handing over that much money for some stupid pastry shop. Like, what do you even sell there? Moldy baguettes with a side of croissants and cheese? Do you employ snails to run the place? Because it smells so bad, you might as well do that. My goodness, go get some actual food, like a burrito or a taco or something. Alright, that's it, mon ami. You've just crossed the line. I declare war. Due to the Mexican government refusing to pay compensation for damaged French businesses in Mexico, France became the only country in history to declare war on another over baguettes, and proceeded to launch an invasion of Veracruz. Right, let's see, what's this? French invade Veracruz. Wait, French invade Veracruz? Hang on, I live there! Ho ho ho, bonjour, mon amigo! Seeing this, Santa Anna quickly returned from retirement, mobilized an army, and marched off to fight the French. And in the fighting that would follow, he would end up losing his leg to French cannon fire. Well, this is a bit awkward. Ultimately, this attempt at resistance was futile, and Mexico was forced to pay compensation. But it did wonders to rehabilitate Santa Anna's reputation. He was able to portray the loss of his leg as a heroic sacrifice in the name of defending Mexico. And practically overnight, he went from being that idiot who lost Texas back to being hero of Tampico, hero of Mexico, and Napoleon of the West. A few months later, he was given the job of being interim president, while President Bustamante was away dealing with some good old violent military insurrections. Speaking of violent military insurrections, some of the Federalist opponents to Bustamante's rule weren't too happy with his performance against the rebels, and when the Rio Grande and Yucatan decided to rebel, well, that was just too much. So they carried out a violent military insurrection, which failed. So they got a new plan, and this time it involved a few generals, most notably the man himself, Santa Anna. And so in 1841, Santa Anna led a violent military insurrection against Bustamante for the second time. Yes, this is the exact same Bustamante that he overthrew at the start of this video. Anyways, the coup was successful, and in the aftermath, Santa Anna was made head of the provisional government, and then president of Mexico. And this presidency was by far his funniest. For one, it was during this presidency that he insisted on being given this title. Santa Anna, Savior of the Fatherland, General of Division, Knight of the Great Cross of the Royal and Distinguished Spanish Order of Charles III, President of the Mexican Republic, Grand Master of the National and Distinguished Order of Guadalupe. I've had to practice that so many times. And second of all, he held a funeral for his leg. Yes, you heard me correctly. He held a funeral for his leg. He dug up his amputated leg and held a funeral for it, with full military honors. The funeral included cannon salvos, lengthy speeches, reverent prayers, and beautiful poetry, all recited in his honor. Needless to say, he was a bit of a narcissist. And this, along with his increased taxes and somewhat tyrannical rule, caused one or two people to get fed up with him. And when he proposed to marry a 15-year-old girl, well, that was just the last straw. And so the army did what Mexican armies do best: a violent military insurrection, resulting in him being deposed and exiled to Cuba. So, surely this is the end of this man's career now, right? Absolutely not. You see, when Texas left Mexico, it took with it only this land here. However, it also made a territorial claim on all of this land here. But since Texas wasn't much of a military juggernaut, this didn't really have any meaningful consequences. However, on December the 27th, 1845, Texas voted to be annexed into the USA, to become one of its states, resulting in the USA inheriting this border dispute, and it suddenly becoming very relevant. And before you know it, American troops were marching into the disputed zone in order to press their claim. These troops ended up getting shot at by the Mexicans, prompting the USA to declare war on Mexico. Now, up until this point, the most serious army that Mexico had faced were a bunch of heavily armed hillbillies, but now they had to contend with the professional American army, and it went exactly as you would expect. They were able to sweep over all of this with basically no resistance. Meanwhile, down south in the Rio Grande, General Taylor had gone about winning a bunch of battles against the Mexicans and capturing a bunch of land. But before all of this, Santa Anna, as soon as the war broke out, began negotiating with the Americans in order to let him through their blockade of Mexico, in order to negotiate a peace treaty. So you're going to negotiate a deal for us? Yup. You're going to lead Mexico to peace? Yup. And you're not going to betray us like you have literally everyone else you've ever dealt with in your life? Absolutely. Alright, seems legit. Off you go then. Yay. He got permission to go through the American blockade and landed in Mexico. However, once there, his tone changed a little. Viva la República de Mexico! Once back in Mexico, he dropped his diplomatic facade and declared himself the president of Mexico, and began mobilizing an army to deal with the Americans. Speaking of the Americans, General Taylor captured the town of Monterrey, and this was something that Santa Anna wasn't about to just let slide. So he took command of his boys and began marching north to engage the Americans. Taylor saw him coming and began to fortify a position on a mountain pass, and when Santa Anna arrived, the Battle of Buena Vista commenced, and initially the much larger Mexican force inflicted heavy casualties on the Americans. However, the Yanks' heavy artillery soon picked up the pace and turned the tide of the battle, and soon Santa Anna's demoralized, undertrained, and underpaid force were forced to retreat. Alright, excellent, you beat him, now go and finish him off! No! Fine, I'll go get someone else. Despite defeating the Mexicans, General Taylor refused to advance any further, and so General Winfield Scott was deployed, and it was his job to launch a naval invasion of the town where this whole mess started. Veracruz. He made a landing and quickly besieged the town, with it surrendering within only 3 weeks. Santa Anna didn't like this very much, and thus got his now 12,000 troops together and began marching to meet the Americans, and meet they did in the Battle of Cerro Gordo. Considering the Americans and Mexicans were roughly even in troop numbers, the battle should have been fairly close. However, due to some tactical suggestions from a certain Captain Robert E. Lee, for some reason I don't think this will be the end of him, Santa Anna got absolutely clobbered, and was once again forced to fall back to Mexico City. This was his last hope, and if Mexico was still going to have any shot at winning the war, Santa Anna was going to have to play his cards very, very carefully. But careful was not a word in Santa Anna's dictionary, and thus he went ahead and lost even more battles in the area surrounding Mexico City. Then, after the city itself was stormed, Mexico was forced to surrender and give up all of this land here. Now, if you ever find yourself the president of an unstable republic somewhere and want to quickly lose your job, a surefire way of doing exactly that is to lose half your country's territory in a major war. And this is exactly what Santa Anna had just done. And because of this, he was once again overthrown and exiled to Jamaica. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely this is the end of this man's career in politics, right? I mean, under his rule so far, Mexico has gone from looking like this to looking like this. Isn't it just common sense at this point to not let this man anywhere remotely near par? No, because in 1853, the centralist government recalled him one last time. Because clearly Mexico hadn't lost enough territory yet, and lose even more territory he did. You see, once in power, he did something like this. I need more money. Hey America, wanna buy this? Sure. Santa Anna committed to the Gadsden Purchase and sold all of this land here to the Americans, under the reasoning that they would have just taken it by force in a few years anyways.
Now, here I have the list of all the people that bought that answer, and as you can see, there is no one on it.
It seemed to many that he did this only to pocket some money to finance his lavish lifestyle, and so, for the final time in his career, he was overthrown and sent into exile. For his few remaining years, he went country hopping around the Caribbean, and even tried to convince the Americans to join him for an intervention in Mexico, in order to replace the Emperor Napoleon III had just installed in Mexico with him. However, this did not work. And so, on June the 21st, 1876, Napoleon of the West and human boomerang Santa Anna, Savior of the Fatherland, General of Division, Knight of the Great Cross of the Royal and Distinguished Spanish Order of Charles III, President of the Mexican Republic, Grand Master of the National and Distinguished Order of Guadalupe, died due to a severe case of not being alive, ending his life and this video. Now, I've got 15 seconds to ramble here, so go watch this here, subscribe, like, if you're really generous, go donate to my PayPal so I have better motivation to do this, comment Guatemala, comment Honduras as well, and, goodbye.